When you close your eyes and imagine the absolute pinnacle of the ancient Roman Empire, you immediately envision flawless white marble columns towering into a bright blue sky. You see perfectly engineered stone aqueducts delivering crystal clear water to millions of citizens. And you picture pristine bathing pools where philosophers discuss the nature of the universe in total peace. Modern history has heavily romanticized the Romans as the ultimate beacon of hygiene and civilization in a dark, primitive world. We are taught that they conquered disease and filth with the same unstoppable mechanical precision that they used to conquer the barbarian forests. But hidden deep beneath the majestic statues, the triumphant arches, and the sweeping geometric architecture lies a suffocating, sickening, and profoundly terrifying reality that completely shatters the cinematic Hollywood myth of ancient cleanliness. Welcome to the terrifying biological nightmare of the Roman public latrine. To the modern mind, the bathroom is a sanctuary of absolute privacy, quiet isolation, and strict personal hygiene. We lock the door, we expect perfect sanitation, and we isolate ourselves from the rest of humanity. But the Romans engineered their toilets exactly like they engineered their brutal military legions, forcing intense, inescapable public order and absolute geometric conformity. Imagine stepping out of the burning Mediterranean sun, walking away from the bustling, extremely noisy marketplace, and descending down a set of dark, damp stone stairs into a deeply shadowed subterranean cavern. The air instantly changes. You are immediately hit by a heavy, invisible, suffocating wall of toxic ammonia and raw, concentrated methane that physically burns the inside of your lungs and makes your eyes violently water in the dark. There are no wooden stalls here. There are no dividing walls, and there is absolutely zero privacy. You are staring at a massive, continuous, cold stone bench that wraps perfectly around the entire perimeter of the dark room, carved with dozens of identical keyhole-shaped openings. You are forced to sit directly shoulder to shoulder, your bare skin pressing against the sweaty flesh of up to 50 completely random strangers in the claustrophobic darkness. In this highly compressed environment, the strict social classes of the Roman Empire completely vanished. A wealthy, powerful senator covered in premium silk could be sitting completely exposed right next to a filthy, exhausted slave or a heavily scarred gladiator. The room was a deafening echo chamber of loud grunting, intense bodily functions, and loud, chaotic conversations, all happening simultaneously in a suffocating cloud of putrid heat. But the sheer psychological horror of this complete lack of privacy was absolutely nothing compared to the horrifying physical and biological dangers lurking directly beneath the cold marble seats. The Romans built these massive public latrines directly over their constantly flowing underground sewer systems, like the infamous Cloaca Maxima. These were deep, pitch-black subterranean rivers of unimaginable human filth, running directly under the beautiful city streets. Because ancient engineering completely lacked modern plumbing traps or water seals to block noxious gases from rising back up, the highly concentrated methane and hydrogen sulfide would regularly, violently build up inside the dark, enclosed stone tunnels. Without any warning whatsoever, this invisible, highly pressurized toxic gas would violently ignite, ignited perhaps by a spark from a dropped torch or intense chemical compression, sending sudden, terrifying pillars of explosive fire shooting directly upward through the open toilet holes, heavily burning the unsuspecting citizens sitting helplessly above. Imagine the absolute terror of sitting in a dark, crowded room and suddenly facing a column of roaring flame erupting from the abyss. But fire was not the only monster living in the dark. The Roman sewers were completely open to the rivers and the sea, which meant they were an incredibly massive, highly active biological ecosystem. Giant, aggressive sewer rats, deadly snakes, and highly venomous spiders constantly thrived in the absolute darkness, feeding on the endless supply of organic waste. Ancient Roman writers like Aelian even documented deeply horrifying instances of massive wild octopuses swimming up from the ocean, perfectly navigating the dark, twisting sewer drains directly into the latrines to feed on disposed pickled fish. Imagine the visceral, heart-stopping terror of sitting in the dark and suddenly feeling the cold, wet claws of a massive rat, or the slimy tentacles of a sea creature violently biting your exposed flesh from the pitch-black hole below. The Romans were so profoundly terrified of these sudden methane explosions and these aggressive subterranean monsters that they genuinely deeply believed horrifying demons and angry spirits lived inside the plumbing. They believed the sewers were literal gateways to the underworld. To protect themselves from being attacked while in such a vulnerable physical state, they would desperately carve magical spells, hexes, and deeply superstitious symbols directly into the stone walls of the latrines. You can still see them today carved into the ruins, frantic prayers to Fortuna, the goddess of luck, begging her to keep them safe from the unseen monsters of the toilet. They even worshipped a specific deity named Cloacina, the goddess of the sewer, hoping she would grant them a safe passage through a simple daily bodily function. But neither the goddess of luck nor the goddess of the sewer could protect the citizens of Rome from the absolute darkest, most viscerally disgusting reality of this entire ancient system. The most terrifying aspect of the Roman latrine was not the fire, the rats, or the lack of privacy. It was their deeply horrifying solution to toilet paper. When you finished your business in the dark, echoing room, you did not reach for clean leaves or fresh linen. In the exact center of the stone floor, right at your feet, was a shallow, mathematically straight geometric trench of continuously flowing dirty water. Resting inside this shallow trench was the ultimate instrument of ancient biological horror, the xylospongium. This was a single, highly abrasive natural sea sponge, permanently, securely attached to the end of a thick wooden stick. This single, thoroughly contaminated object was not for your personal private use. It was communal. It was shared by hundreds of sweaty, filthy strangers every single day, from dawn until dusk. When you needed to wipe, you reached down and picked up the stick. You used the rough sponge, and then you casually, briefly rinsed it in the shallow trench of flowing water, or sometimes in a small, stagnant bucket filled with heavily soiled vinegar or thick, concentrated salt water. And then, without a single second thought, you casually handed the dripping, soaking wet, bacteria-soaked sponge directly to the stranger sitting right next to you, so he could use it on his own body. In their desperate, highly organized, misguided attempt to engineer perfect public sanitation, the Romans accidentally created the ultimate, highly efficient mechanical factory for spreading deadly diseases. They believed the salt and vinegar were enough to purify the sponge, but modern science tells us they were creating a weapon of mass biological destruction. By passing this wet object from hand to hand, from body to body, the Romans systematically infected their entire massive population with deadly intestinal parasites, roundworms, whipworms, cholera, and terrifying waves of dysentery. Archaeologists studying preserved Roman waste have discovered that despite their beautiful baths and their obsession with flowing water, the Roman population was actually significantly more infected with parasites than the primitive, dirty barbarians living in the wild forests. The Roman machine of civilization was literally poisoning itself from the inside out. The xylospongium was not just an instrument of disease, it was also a tool of profound, dark despair. There is a famous, deeply disturbing historical account recorded by the great Roman philosopher Seneca that perfectly illustrates the horrifying psychological weight of the Roman world. Seneca tells the true story of an unnamed Germanic barbarian warrior who had been violently captured and forced to fight as a gladiator in the massive, screaming arenas. The barbarian was locked in the holding cells underneath the amphitheater, listening to the terrifying roar of the bloodthirsty crowd above, knowing he was about to be pushed out into the burning sand to be brutally butchered for public entertainment. Under the strict, unyielding watch of heavily armed Roman guards, the only place a prisoner was ever allowed to be alone for even a fraction of a second was the public latrine. The barbarian asked to relieve himself and walked into the dark, echoing bathroom. He knew he was about to die a horrific, painful death for the amusement of his captors, and he made a terrifying, desperate decision. Rather than face the iron swords of the arena, he picked up the communal xylospongium, the filthy, disease-ridden sponge on a stick, and he violently shoved the entire wooden shaft deep down his own throat. He deliberately choked himself to death on the absolute most disgusting object in the entire Roman Empire, choosing the filth of the latrine over the cruel entertainment of Rome. Seneca, a man of high civilization, did not write about this event with disgust. He wrote about it with deep philosophical admiration, praising the wild barbarian for finding a way to seize his own freedom, using the only weapon available to him in a world of inescapable mathematical control. This is the true, unvarnished reality of the ancient world. It is a world where extreme monumental beauty and extreme biological horror existed exactly side by side. The next time you find yourself staring in absolute awe at the flawless, mathematically perfect white ruins of a Roman city, or watching a highly romanticized Hollywood movie about shining legionaries and golden eagles, I want you to completely forget about the clean swords and the majestic marble temples. I want you to look deeper into the shadows. Think about the dark, suffocating, claustrophobic stone rooms echoing with the sounds of 50 strangers. Think about the invisible, highly pressurized methane gas waiting to erupt into pillars of explosive fire. Think about the giant, desperate sewer rats waiting in the pitch-black abyss. And most importantly, think about the terrifying, shared wet sponge being passed from hand to hand in the darkness. Behind every towering, majestic pillar of human civilization, beneath every flawlessly paved geometric stone road, lies a deeply horrifying, perfectly engineered biological nightmare. We build massive, beautiful cities to escape the chaos of nature, but in the end, we are always forced to sit in the dark and face our own inescapable human filth. The Roman Empire conquered the entire known world with iron and discipline, but they could never conquer the darkness lurking directly beneath their own stone floors. Subscribe for more dark, unvarnished history, and let us descend once again into the suffocating shadows.